We're going to call this meeting of the Sacramento Regional Solid Waste Authority to order at 3:04 p.m. on Thursday, September 14, 2017. If we could have the clerk please call the roll.
Good afternoon, Directors Ashby.
Here.
Carr.
Here.
Frost.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Peters. Cerna.
Here.
Guerra.
Here.
Natoli.
Here.
And you have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and do the do we have to read the statement?
Yeah, I'll read that for you.
Oh, good.
Yeah. This meeting of the Solid Waste Authority is cablecast live on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on the Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T Uverse cable systems. The meeting is closed captioned and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will replay Saturday, September 16th at 2 p.m. on Channel 14. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker identification form located at the back of chambers and give it to the clerk. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. If you have any electronic devices, please silence them at this time. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. If everybody can quickly join me for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go ahead and start with the first action item here. If the clerk could call the first item.
Yes, item number 1 is General Manager's Report.
Well, welcome everybody. Another after the summer session of the SWA board. Thank you very much for you and the audience members to be here. We appreciate it. We've had a busy summer this year. As promised, we held 4 stakeholder meetings with the various franchise holders and interested parties on some of the issues that are going to affect us in the short term and the long term. I'm very pleased with the progress and the process that we go through with that. We've got some great interaction. I won't say that everybody in the stakeholder room agrees with everything, but over time we've come to some consensus on direction, and I think the process is working very well. We're going to continue that process with important items. I did want to mention that we talked in the past about a couple of our issues revolving a couple of franchise permit people that we believe should have a franchise. We have suspended that activity pending some clarification on AB 901. The state has not yet issued, they're still in the process of gathering information. They haven't issued their regulations, and so those couple companies that we're dealing with, those items are still suspended. And we're trying to work through both with 901 staff and then with those folks on how to handle that in the future. And we're kind of waiting for the state to come out with the regs. At the point that we see what the regs are and how they impact our franchise and our SWA ordinances, we'll be back to you with some suggested either changes or certainly explanations on how that 901 process is going to impact us. So.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board members with the staff director's report? If not, then we'll go ahead and move to the consent items. Is there a motion on the consent calendar? It's been moved by board member Carr. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by board member Kennedy. Any discussion from the board? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any of those opposed? If not, motion passes. Consent items approved. And I should have mentioned that there was no speaker slips for those items beforehand. Okay, we'll go on to discussion items number 5. If the clerk could please call the item.
Item number 5 is workshop on SWA Organics program developments and potential code amendments.
Thank you. Do I turn this on? I think I am on. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Dave Ghirardelli with the Solid Waste Authority staff. And the item number 5 in front of you is related to what Mr. Sloan just spoke to. It's about organics, specifically food waste. This is the biggest thing happening in waste management right now. There's been a flurry of legislation from the state level, and many of those pieces of legislation, although chartered, are in the administrative rule writing process. So the landscape is a little bit unfocused at this point, but we're trying to just make sure we stay ahead of the curve. The word revolution is used a little bit in hyperbole, I think, too much. That is not an understatement at this point. This is the current revolution in waste management, and I like to look at it in a historical context through a certain lens. We've had two revolutions in waste management in the last several decades. The first one is what I refer to as the RCRA revolution. That is the revolution that gave us the modern solid waste management system. Mandated collection on a weekly basis, containers and vehicles that are inspected, liners under landfills. The whole modern waste management system grows out of that, and it is designed to protect against the nuisances and the risks associated with managing solid waste, specifically the putrescible portion. Jump forward about 20 years and you have what I refer to as the recycling revolution. That is, wow, we're wasting a lot of stuff. Let's look inside that dumpster and see what we can't get out and put to better use. This third revolution, this organics revolution, is through that lens, kind of a collision of those two frameworks that grew out of that. We're now reaching into the garbage to get the garbage out. Garbage has a specific definition in both federal and state law, and that it is food waste. We have a garbage disposal under our kitchen sink. It's not for candy wrappers, it's for plate scrapings. The garbage we're trying to get out of the garbage is the very garbage that makes garbage garbage. It is the putrescible material. It is what poses the risks. And as waste managers, our first mission is to avoid and mitigate the risks associated with that putrescible material to human health and the environment. This is the putrescible material. As waste managers, we got our eye out for leaks, odors, and rats. Air emissions, water emissions, and vectors. This organics revolution has many different components, like any revolution will have. On the one end, you've got the education component. As a matter of fact, recently the SWA partnered with the Sacramento News and Review and some other jurisdictions to come up with an 8-page insert that was in the paper very recently, rolling this out, giving some information. We're trying to lay the foundation and lay the groundwork for the education efforts in the future and the behavioral change that is coming. And I am confident that when we look back many years from now, it's going to be obvious. All the kitchen in the restaurants in Sacramento are going to have a little green bin at the end of the prep table, and people will be in the habit of that. That will take work, it will take time. On the other end of it, on the back end, technologies will be deployed. We have existing technologies such as composting. There are technologies that were developed in other industries but are now being adapted to the solid waste industry. For example, anaerobic digestion. There are other technologies that are being deployed. Combination of refining, rendering, getting this food waste material to better purpose. The part where we're dealing with today is that middle piece. It's the collection. How, and the biggest question is what role the SWA will play with regulatory oversight. What sort of oversight role towards the collection of this material? We now have food waste being separated out from the garbage, or separating out from the rest of solid waste. How do we govern that collection? As the SWA implemented AB 1826, which was the food waste recycling rule. This is the businesses of us who generated a certain amount of food waste had to participate in a recycling program. Consistent with state law, we approached that with Ordinance 26 2 years ago, that food waste is solid waste, and collection of that would need a franchise. As we rolled that out, we encountered businesses who not just are innovators trying to get into this business and be part of the solution, but often had been doing this for years. Specifically, folks from the agricultural community, folks who take byproducts from food processing and collect that and get it back into an industrial system where it's mixed with other materials and, for example, turned into bagged food for animals. There are also innovators, folks who are taking food waste material from grocery stores and large food courts and processing it for primarily its liquid component to be used as a fertilizer. These folks they're square pegs and we have round holes. How do we approach this while balancing the two needs? Number one, promoting diversion. Number two, watching out for nuisances. That's our critical juncture. As part of this solution, as is general practice with the SWA, we've said, well, let's gather our stakeholders. And that's what we did this summer. We had a series of 4 meetings inviting all those parties, both folks who participate in SWA programs as franchisees or as certified facilities, and folks who are both the innovators. For example, the great innovator that I like to think of is the guy who's collecting food waste from restaurants in 5-gallon buckets and composting them at community gardens. This is great. These are innovators. We want to see this, but how do we both encourage the diversion, but yet not also just create an explosion of potential nuisances? So we gathered them together, and we seek, as staff, some direction from the board how you see these two values balanced. And I hope you'll also accept a fair amount of input from the community, both currently regulated and potentially regulated. So I guess right now, after reading the staff report, if you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer them, and then we can turn it over to stakeholder input.
Okay, thank you. I think what we'll do here is we have 2 items, 2 people from the public who've signed up to speak on this. We'll take them first, and then we'll see if we have any direction from the board from there. And I think we've had this conversation before, and a little bit of time to think about it. So we'll call up the first person.
Thank you.
Evan Edgar. And then the next person on the list is Gary Silva Jr. Gary Silva Jr.
Board members, my name is Evan Edgar of Edgar Associates. I'm an engineer in town. I've been representing the compost industry for 25 years. I represent about 30 facilities statewide throughout California. I was a member of SWAC back in the 90s. I was part of Green Cycle on a first attempt in order to get compost in Sacramento County. But SWA has a huge lift. There's a lot of tons. Let's talk about tons. With SB 1383, Sacramento County-wide has to divert 75% of all organics by 2025 and have 15 years of processing capacity. What that means is 1.7 million cubic yards of organic processing capacity by 2030. I'm a tons guy. That's about 480,000 tons per year by 2025, 8 years from now. Now, SWA wants to do about 100,000 tons per year for Green Cycle. So we got to do 5 Green Cycles to make this work. On food waste, about 210,000 tons per year. New green waste, 70,000 tons per year. Wood waste, urban lumber, 100,000 tons per year, on top of biomass crisis we got going on. Compostable paper, 50,000 tons per year. And green waste ADC, you guys are still using green waste for alternative daily cover. That gets phased out by 2020. That's 48,000 tons per year. So you have a huge lift. Starting 2018 at Cower Cycle, they're going to phase out land application with regards to contamination rates. Right now, there's an easy way to get rid of green waste, but it'd be less than 0.5% contamination, and that will be enforced by the Water Board. So land application is going to be curtailed. Green waste, ADC, will be curtailed. So I'm out in Yolo County, Napa County, Lake County, developing facilities statewide. But the city struggles. Are you guys the city of trees, or are you farm to fork? As you guys talk about all that, but the emperor has no compost. That's the problem in Sacramento County. We're importing compost for the farm-to-fork movement. At the state level, I got to commend Supervisor Cerna at CARB. They're doing great work with the Healthy Soils Initiative, with the short-lived climate pollutants, to get the organics out of the landfill. It makes methane. We take the methane, put it back into the truck in order to make renewable natural gas. And we have these low NOx engines that are ultra low NOx, so the whole fleet can be changed over to have carbon negative fuel with zero emissions for NOx, near zero emissions for NOx. So it's a big revolution. It is a revolution going on. The state has a 75% recycling goal by 2020, the recycling rate. We're only at 44% and we're dropping. So the state's going in the wrong direction for the 5th year in a row. Part has to do with commodity pricing with China. Another part has to do with cheap landfill capacity. With regards to cheap landfill capacity, I think Kiefer's at 24 bucks a ton. I'm not sure, you get volume pricing. But when my companies I represented bid upon Green Cycle about 5 years ago, it cost about 60 bucks a ton to do it right, to have aerated static pile to fit the regulations of the air board and the air districts. And air districts are tough. The South Sacramento area AQMD has made a point of saying they don't want to permit compost facilities in Sacramento. So you have a big challenge, big tons, big lift. So what Sacramento needs, we need compost, not only farm to fork, but fork to farm in order to bring organics back to our soils for a Healthy Soils Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edgar. Okay, we're going to go with Gary Silva Jr.
Thank you, Mr. President and Board. My name is Gary Silva. I'm one of the persons that got the notification of being in violation for hauling what we consider a byproduct. That's one of the things that we've been working with your staff, and they've done a great job in these workshop meetings to understand what we do, the process we've done. We've been in Sacramento County, it'll be 100 years next year farming here in Sacramento County. And basically what we do with a lot of different processors is we take the fruit, tomatoes, and feed it to our cattle, a product that never goes to a landfill, never has gone to a landfill. Been doing it, like I said, 50 years just in the last bit here in Sacramento, from Blue Diamond to G&H Food to, used to be Campbell Soup. We used to haul a lot out of there too. So my concern and the things we've been working so well with your staff is the product we haul has never gone to a landfill. It's not a processed waste product. It's a byproduct that's fed for animals. If it had gone to a landfill, I can sure see why we'd need to be a franchise, and I agree with people doing that. But we never have done that and never intend to do that. And so on the presentations that we've been working with stakeholders, how do you as a board interpret what Cal Recycle says and their definition versus what we do, and how we can all work together? Quite honestly, your staff, if you make us do this, you've got to take every hauler that comes out of Blue Diamond, everyone that comes out of RGA, everyone that comes out of every ag product, grape pumice, tomato pumice, and make all those people franchise fees, because all that's a product that will spoil, will do this. So what we're asking for is to continue to work with your staff to find out some way that our deal would be that round hole in a square peg, to work together. And so I just want to compliment Dave, everyone that's been working with us, the stakeholders, to try and come to a solution. I do agree that if we have the violation, we have the rats, vermin, and stuff like that, absolutely, we should, anybody, myself included, if we have those violations, then we need to be, as part of the program, to be that. But otherwise, I don't feel, and you're going to open up a can of worms, business-wise, ag-wise, that I don't think your staff has the manpower to handle. So thank you for your time, and thank your staff very much for everything they've done.
Great, thank you very much. I know we've got Board Member Natoli here wanting to speak, but just to put it into quick context, I think we're still in the regulation development of AB 901, so we have a lot of time still to come up. And if you could come up here, I know Board Member Natoli has some comments here. So we're basically in a holding pattern, but we're just getting feedback, correct?
Correct. The bigger picture is not only 901. What AB 901 does is it puts a lot of the reporting and monitoring of both haulers and facilities who handle recyclable material at the state level.
Correct.
that law has been passed, but it leaves a lot to the administrative code writing. So we're in a little bit of a holding pattern.
Sure.
1383 similarly will have a little more far-reaching effect, I think, in the organics business. Not so much in the, what type of business is doing what, but in more of a mandate for the jurisdictions. So that's to some extent a holding pattern. We kind of need to know how we deal with this collection issue in a little bit shorter term. It can certainly be temporary decisions how you would like us to move forward until we have clarity from the state.
Great. Thank you. Board Member Natoli.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe a question for Dave and maybe for Mr. Silva as well. Certainly have some familiarity. I know that Mr. Silva and certainly his ranching operation reached out both to Mr. Sloan and certainly to EMD a number of months ago, and I think brought to our attention to both to the Solid Waste Authority and Solid Waste Recycling section of the county, and certainly to EMD, some of the dilemmas that are, I think, outlined. You did a good job, Dave, in outlining those. I guess my question is then, with the draft language you've submitted after you've done your summer listening sessions and your outreach, you've got two different iterations here that are suggestions to at least to items 3 and 4 that wouldn't be outright exemptions, or would provide some bookends to how we would conduct the oversight and or permitting and or recognition of certain types of haulers, certain types of operations. So if I could be clear then on what's in our packet, is the ordinance language that would be suggested for meeting, I guess, number 3, which exempt food waste haulers from franchise requirement as long as there's no nuisances created. I think I heard Gary speak to that as to that maybe being a preference. And again, if I'm incorrect, I'll certainly ask him to come up here and state for the record. But is that the one that would then deal with the farms and ranches and still provide the ability under other nuisance code enforcement, city, county, or other entity, EMD, to regulate?
In short, both 3 and 4, and if we could get the slide, which is in tabular form. The alternatives in your staff report were presented. This gives you a tabular form, and the language, I struggled with trying to figure out what the header for column 2 and column 3 would be. In short, either one could conceivably work. Item 3, alternative 3, excuse me, would exempt the activity. You would be exempt from franchised hauling, from having to have a franchise if you hauled the food waste, avoiding the nuisances. Item 4 is something that came up in the stakeholder meeting. It similarly could do that. It would create. We have an existing putrescible organics certification program. Now that program is robust. That could conceivably be scaled down a little bit to some sort of registration program, and have facilities that are doing that, such as an agricultural operation like Mr. Silva, simply register, and they would be able to source material. So either of those two options, which are presented in this extremely draft, again, we are not asking for introduction of this ordinance. We have not. This is a workshop. These are just.
But you're seeking direction, if I take it correctly,
Yeah.
from this board, at least hearing
Right.
from each of us individually, if not collectively.
Right. Yeah.
So David, let me ask then,
Sure.
what from a staff perspective, and again, I am going to ask Mr. Silva to come up and weigh in on this as well, if I could, Mr. Chair. But from a staff perspective, either one would work. The difference I see in your chart that's up on the screen, under number 4, you say difficult to administer. You don't say that about number 3.
Correct. And again, I apologize. I struggled with the headings for those for column 2 and 3. Column 2 it tends to be how it would what the impact on those two performances were after: avoiding nuisances and promoting diversion. Column 3, kind of the implementation impact is, well, how is this going to work? What are the difficulties we're going to encounter making this work, both on staff perspective as well as the business community. Because again, one of the real gems that we have in Sacramento here is a vibrant, competitive system. So how would it conceivably affect businesses? The reason why I added or offered for your consideration difficulty to administer is that we have this certification program, which currently we have 1 composting facility and 2 anaerobic digesters participating in that. If we were to, it's a voluntary program, it is relatively simple to administer. But if we were to create a registration program, we're creating another program. It's another whole list of businesses, and we're talking, food processors, bagged animal feed manufacturers, agricultural operations. We could do it, but it would be another administrative
But number 3
exercise.
is the simplest then. It still gives us the ability to deal with nuisances, no different than 4. It doesn't require a registration program. And again, if there are some particular issues that arise out of that, we can deal with either individually or collectively under an ordinance at some future date. Is that accurate?
Might be a little more difficult to administer, to avoid nuisances, but I think the difference would be marginal.
Okay.
With item number 3, it might be a little bit more, because you don't have a list of parties that are accountable to
Okay.
you. You're responding to situations that may arise.
Okay. If I could,
Marginally.
could I have Mr. Silva? I just want to ask him what he talked about it.
Mr. Silva, if you could come up here real
Yeah.
quick. Thanks. And then I do have Mr. Carr on the speakers list here.
So Gary, certainly you're reflective of the farming ranch community, and so on this, of the 2 options that are presented to this board for at least some additional dialogue, would yours be 3 or 4 as far as a preference? I think I heard you state 3, but I want to be clear.
I thought 3 was very, very good. I'm concerned with what they keep presenting all the time about making sure someone doesn't come in, take this stuff away from a processor, leak out all over the streets, get the rats, things like that. That's the last thing we want to see in agriculture on our part. I don't want to be on the ag alert of having stuff, do that, that's for sure. So I think 3's fine, 4's fine. I think that overall both would work.
Okay.
So agriculture committee, everyone I've talked to said both would work with
Okay.
them also. So.
All right. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate
No
it. Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Board Member Tully. Mr. Board Member Carr.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're not going to take any action until the new bill is passed.
No.
You are asking us to give you guidance on what you should do in the interim,
Correct.
and you have presented 5 alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the staff recommendation and why?
We do not have a recommendation at this point. We are presenting some alternatives, looking for some direction. I think when we put the 5 alternatives together, the first 2 are, one of the exercises we like to go through with our stakeholders is let's put all kinds of options on the table, even if they're a little far-fetched. Because if for no other purpose, articulating why they are far-fetched or why they're problematic and not going to work helps you really understand the underlying value set. So first 2, leave as is, or just redefine food waste as like we do bottles and cans and take a very hands-off approach, are a little on the far-fetched side. Item 5 came up in conversation, but after discussions with county council, you run the risk of being arbitrary. You're in effect regulating. If you just choose a point in time where folks before this are exempt, folks after this have to get into, you could end up finding the exact same business practice being regulated under different regimes. Somewhat problematic. So 3 and 4 have certainly emerged as the most viable options, and they could be done in some sort of interim fashion while we wait until the final word comes out from the administrative code writing exercise at the state, which CalRecycle is currently doing, primarily for AB 901, AB 1383, SB 1383 may impact this, but 901 should clarify things. So some sort of guidance. Continue to work with stakeholders to refine whether to use item alternative 3 or 4, or if the board has a consensus, we can go with that.
Very good. Okay,
So
Mr. Carr.
you want us to tell you which one of these you should pursue?
Yep. That would be great. That would provide a lot of guidance for staff. We'd like to
You
hear
don't have,
from...
and you've been working this all this time, and you don't have a recommendation for us, and you want us to pick one of these to pursue?
Well, these are the two
Or
most
two to
viable
pursue.
options that emerged from the stakeholder engagement process.
3 and 4.
Yeah, 3 and 4. We'd love to hear from, I personally would have hoped that some other stakeholders, they were certainly willing to speak frankly with us during the sessions. Wish some others had been willing to participate and come up to the podium, but we'd love to hear your input.
Great. Okay, is that Mr. Carr was?
Yeah.
Perhaps. I'll go here to Board Member Cerna.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Forgive me if this has already been addressed, but just to be clear, the term nuisance here, is it being used to suggest addressing nuisances at the source point or at both the source point and the process point?
At the source point.
Okay, because I know that certainly my office and perhaps some other district offices, both city and county, have had to deal with some nuisance issues on the air quality side in terms of the processing and the methane that comes from the processing. So do any of these alternatives attempt to address that?
They do not. Remember from the introduction, what this discussion here is not about the education component nor the facility recycling component. This is how the SWA, and the SWA as its initial and primary function was a body to govern the collection and transportation of solid waste. It's the leaks, odors, and rats that we might encounter in the alleyway, at the dumpster, in the truck, it's that collection component.
Okay. Knowing what I do so far about the alternatives that have been laid out, I'm since you are seeking direction on trying to narrow the list of alternatives, for what it's worth, Mr. Chair, I'd say alternative 3 is the alternative I'm most inclined to support at this point.
Great, thanks. And I think I heard Supervisor Natoli mention 3 was a potential option. No, but Mr. Natoli, you're queued up here.
Yes, you heard correctly. I was just going to state it, and I support 3.
Good. And I think we're hearing 3. Ms. Frost? There you go.
I have the impression, though, from some of the public statement that the franchisees or business owners would like to work through this a little bit more. Is that, did I misunderstand that, or did I misunderstand that?
No,
I have a sense that they're asking for us to work through these solutions a little more completely.
And perhaps I can address Mr. Carr's request a little more directly. As it stands right now, item 1, leaving it as is, it really doesn't accomplish what we need. We have a couple people that we think should be, by current definition, should be required to have franchises. We've come to learn that the process that they have, they may not fit real well with this, and we put their action on hold as we work through these issues. So yes, there are businesses that would like us to continue working with them. We have this overriding, so we don't want to violate the SWA ordinance and codes because we have these folks on perpetual suspension. So in my mind, addressing items either 3 or 4 or both would help us get the issues with Mr. Silva and a couple of the others to a better place so that we can continue to work with them. But in the big picture, 901 and the reporting, there's several different scenarios that could come out of that. One is that all the activity that, for example, Mr. Silva does might have to be reported to the state under 901. It might not be part of a franchise that the SWA would have, but based on the conversation that I had with Cal Recycle staff earlier, he probably would be required, based on that meeting, to register with them and report to them. There will be a lot of businesses that will be in that same position. All we're trying to do right now is get a little bit of direction in terms of the 2 or 3 that we have on suspension. Again, all the alternatives up there, I would recommend not leaving it as is and adopting, for example, 3 and/or 4, so that we can continue on with the program and continue on the dialogue. I will say that part of the benefit of adding the stakeholders, Mr. Silva is involved with the Cattlemen's Association and the California Farm Bureau. Those are organizations that this really, I don't think, was on the radar screen until he's raised it with those organizations, and I'm looking for a lot of feedback at the state level from their organization to help with the 901, and that'll provide clarity for us.
Okay, so if I can provide some, it looks like we have a couple board members here, also comment from the public that 3 is acceptable. Unless there's any other objection to that, I guess without needing a motion here, you're needing some guidance. It looks like there's a comfort level of going with number 3. This is going to come back, we're going to hear it in October or whenever AB 109 comes anyway. So for now, does that give you enough direction to go with number 3?
Absolutely.
Is there any objections from the board? If not, then I think you've got your direction. We won't take a motion on this, but now you've got some guidance.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go on to the next item. If the clerk could please read the next item.
Item number 6, workshop on franchisee diversion performance in rural areas.
Hello again. As a little bit of history as well on the SWA franchise system. The 30% diversion mandate is something that has been a part of the SWA since close to its inception. Early on, around in 2000, it was required that franchisees divert 30% of the material they handle by ton. The world was a fair amount different there. We did not have the same level of business activity in the exclusively recycling business. Franchisees struggled with this, so it was suspended in 2007. The industry matured in that time. More and more generators of waste got on board. The recycling mentality matured. More people were interested in doing it. So in order to provide the region with a push on commercial recycling, the 30% mandate was re-implemented in 2014. There are several dynamics at play in addition to this influx of businesses who do exclusively recycling, who in effect pull some of this tonnage away from our franchisees. One of the dynamics that we have encountered, generally speaking, the franchisees have been able to meet this. There is specifically, they get a lot of mileage out of the construction and demolition debris program. Those facilities are certified at a significant diversion rate, so in order to get themselves up and over 30, they can divert more open top or roll off construction debris type tonnage to those facilities. We have one facility who, for a number of reasons, is a victim of the math. They operate primarily in the southern part of the county. They've had trouble meeting the 30% because of several factors. One, their generators, their customers, their clientele tend to be small businesses that are generating small amounts of waste. So the businesses are not, as small generators, subject to recycling requirements, as well as the fact that in rural areas, it is hard to build what's called route density, to get a significant number of clients close enough to a recycling facility. From a service provision standpoint, we've had absolutely no problems with this franchisee. We have no complaints about missed service, late service, unmarked containers, leaks, odors, and rats. We have not had service provision problems from this franchisee. By every other measure, they're a good franchisee, but they consistently were unable to meet the 30%. They engaged with staff. And we decided to, as we did with the other topic, bring this, because if we're going to try to accommodate any hauler in a competitive system, we can't just do that for one. This has to be vetted through the entire community. So we had, again, through this series of stakeholder meetings, we discussed this openly and frankly with our other franchisees and discussed a number of alternatives. At the end of this stakeholder process, one solution did emerge that appears to have consensus. The staff report doesn't really dial into this. This happened actually with some phone calls after the staff report had been written. So, Amanda, if I could get the slide number 2. What appears to be emerging as an acceptable solution to this problem would be an exclusion zone that all franchisees, rural exclusion zone that all franchisees would be able to take advantage of. Clearly, the franchisee that holds a higher proportion of their business in this area would benefit a little bit more. But we feel this is a viable solution. And a couple of points to make. Number one is that this would not be an exemption from the recycling requirement for businesses located here. This potential exclusion zone is purely a function of the franchisee's math. The state requires businesses that generate over a certain level of solid waste have to have a recycling program. The SWA cannot just overrule that. So businesses that are large generators down in this area would still have to have a recycling program, but the one franchisee who does a large portion of their business in this area, as well as other franchisees, would simply be able to take that tonnage off of both the numerator and the denominator when doing their math for the SWA.
Okay, all right. So everybody's equal then?
Yes.
Okay, good. Any question? We do have one person from the public here that's willing to speak, and that is Mr. Jack Fiore. Hello, Mr. Fiore.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking some time to hear this. Jack Fiore, I'm the Vice President with California Waste Recovery Systems. We are that franchisee who is having the problem with achieving these diversion numbers. And Mr. Ghirardelli covered really all the good stuff, but in 2015 we realized that with the business we had in the market that we worked, we were failing to accomplish the goal of achieving the 30%. So I met with staff back then. We started exploring some options, trying some different kinds of marketing and outreach, and just began the discussion that has eventually brought us to where we are today. Our area of focus in terms of our business, our market in Sacramento County is the rural area surrounding Galt out to the river and then south to the Antioch Bridge. And again, as Mr. Ghirardelli said, a lot of 1-yarders, 2-yarders, 3-yarders. There is no mandatory recycling for that group of customers. That represents over 2/3 of our customer count. And Paul Filio first said it, that we were a victim of the math, and that truly is the problem. We just have too many small ones to allow the big ones to carry the water. The idea of a rural exemption is attractive to us. We've been a franchise hauler for as long as I can remember in Sacramento County. Very interested in continuing our relationship, continuing to provide great service here, but we need to overcome this. The C&D, as discussed, the roll-off work, I think that's a significant portion of what needs to stay in place. Unfortunately, in this market, there isn't a lot of it out there. It's not like we can go find another 100 houses being built to shore up our numbers. So right. We are where we are.
Great, thank you, Mr. Fiore. It seems to me that we've got a good hauler, and we've got no objections to the exclusion of a rural zone. I do have a couple board members here who want to speak, and there's nobody else from public comment, so I'll go to Board Member Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank our staff certainly for, again, I think, taking the approach to go out and talk with the folks in the industry who are providing those services to their retail customers, whether they be in the rural areas or certainly in the urban and suburban settings. And I think as David has outlined here this afternoon, I think what they've come up with is a solution set that allows folks, whether they be marina owners or small farms and ranches or restaurants and other commercial businesses throughout. Most of this is located in my district. Some's in Supervisor Frost and maybe in a couple of other areas closer to the City of Sacramento and other districts. But I think it makes sense that we have one hauler, but it would, I think, allow for a level playing field if others actually did provide service in that area. And I think, addresses, rural service for folks that want their solid waste materials picked up through this particular means, and maintains good relationship with both the businesses who depend upon those haulers to do that, but also I think keeps the playing field level for others that operate both in that area if they choose to, or franchise to do so, but also in other areas of the county. So I would be supportive of the recommendation that's come together, I guess, very recently, maybe as recently as today, and I think it's a good solution set for all. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Board Member Natoli. Board Member Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the recommendation on this one. My question,
in it as it is.
My question is, though, in the effect on Cal Waste, would probably allow continuation of franchise.
Let me get my in the table.
So I'm focusing on the word probably.
Yeah, this.
What's the probability?
The probability is that they still have work to do. We haven't gone back and asked them to recalculate. This is just, this should buy them a fair number of percentage points. We can't look back and say, yes, that's going to raise that 22.2 to a 30.1. They still have work to do.
Okay.
They will still need to aggressively participate in recycling efforts. It really is. It's a victim of the mass situation. Cal Waste tends to do just as well as the other haulers, given the clientele.
Got it.
So,
thank you.
Good. I think Board Member Frost.
So I have a question relating to the other service providers. If we were to provide this exemption, would it create a competitive disadvantage for other companies who might want to cover that area, or do they probably not want to cover that area because it's rural in nature and it would cost them more to cover it than to want to deal with it?
I hope that those other service providers could perhaps come up and answer the question directly for you. That this has been vetted through them. They are the other. We have a competitive system. It is not one zone goes to one company and one zone goes to another company. All of the haulers are active in this southern area. One of them, Cal Waste specifically, is more present there than others. This exclusion zone, every franchisee would be able to participate in. The difference is a franchisee who focuses on this area because of their home base down in the southern area. It might be, 50-60% of their business. Another hauler who might be much larger and does a whole lot of business in the more built-up areas of the City of Sacramento and in the county up Arden Arcade Way, they might have a whole lot of business there. They'll still get it to take advantage of this exclusion, but it's a small portion of their business. So it does not. Every franchisee would be able to take advantage of this.
So every franchisee who's operating in that geographic area calculates their waste with the same.
Correct.
Right.
It would just be exactly. It would just be a smaller proportion of a different haulers.
And so so the consensus among all of them, you're telling me, is that they're good with this. This could help all of them.
This is what I hear from the franchisees. Again, I hope that they would be willing to come up and talk.
They're giving me thumbs up out there, I think.
Okay.
Some of
I
them
can't
are.
see the thumbs out of the back.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. All right.
Yes. If I could just clarify a couple of things. So in general, the big three haulers are located in the Florin Road, Fruit Ridge area. And so for them to send trucks all the way down the very South County gets
Costs more
expensive. It's a
money.
lot of windshield time. California Waste Recovery is based out of Galt. And so they're already in the South County, so that's where they have the majority. Having been in the business before, running a roll-off truck down to the area is not as big a deal, but if you're running a front loader that's picking up 2 yards, it's a long ways to go on windshield time, very costly. And so the benefit to this is that all the area in the blue, there will be more competition up around Elk Grove area and the southern part of Bradshaw area and those kind of things, so there's a lot more competition, but going all the way down the South County is really a decision the haulers have to make in terms of how much it's going to cost them.
Great. And we do have Mr. Lean, Mike Lean, who I think would like to comment on this, and he's down in that area we're talking about.
Yes, I am. Mike Lean, L&D Landfill. Good afternoon. I wasn't going to speak to this, but, and we're not a hauler, but we are a construction demolition processor. We're the largest one in the region. And I can't speak to it from our perspective. And it struck me that it would make some sense to at least stand up. Thanks for letting me get outside of the public hearing. The key from our perspective is if you roll things back to originally the 30% franchise requirement of recycling was put in place in the early 2000s. In 2008, we made a commitment, early 2008, we made a commitment to spend about $1 million to build a C&D processing line, which we did. We then late in 2008, the county came in and, for reasons I won't get into, made a decision to quit enforcing the 30%. In 2014, the county put that back in place. Within about 3 months of the first fines coming out for people not being compliant, our operation would have been, which had been operating at 50% of capacity, was operating at 100% of capacity, and we've been operating at capacity since for about 2 years now. And this will not affect us because the key to it is have this be front-end loader stuff. And most of the processing that we do is from either small independent haulers who are building houses, doing remodeling, those sorts of things, or from the drop boxes that are hauled. And that's the key to this legislation in our opinion. And it's not just our opinion, I think it's the key of the group. I think the haulers see it the same way. Here again, they're here and they'll either nod or speak up, or if they don't, I think their silence will prove where they're coming from. But the key to this is that I think all of us see that that it does bring a level of fairness to particularly Cal Waste. Doesn't preclude any of the other haulers from going in and competing with Cal Waste to getting into that marketplace. As a matter of fact, it gives them an incentive to go in because they're actually in a position to where it won't be a negative to their recycling, as opposed to today, it would be a negative to their recycling that they would need to factor in. And so with that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions, but I thought it makes some sense to add that in.
Thank you, Mr. Lean. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, it seems like I think you're looking for direction. You had support there from Board Member Natoli. Again, there's no objections here from the public. So unless there's objections from the board, I think you're going with creating the rural exclusion zone is the direction you can receive from this board.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
We'll go on and move on to item number 7. If the clerk could please call that item.
Adoption of fiscal year 2017-2018 final budget.
Okay, so we're at budget time again, and if there are any motions or discussions from the board? Is there a presentation on the budget? If not, then we
We're
will.
prepared to answer questions. I would point out a couple things. Last year in the budget, we had some programs in there. We had $400,000 for the incentive to try and get people to divert some of their material early before the requirement in, I think it's January of 2019. 2019. That program, we put a lot of money into it. We weren't sure at the time, and we just didn't get a lot of participation in as much as we thought in the program. And so in this fiscal year, there was excess money at the end of the year. And from a budgeting standpoint, we have the budget for the year that you approve. We go through the year, and whatever there are calculated amounts in terms of what we're going to send back to the respective general funds that's split approximately 50-50. We true that up before the end of the year as part of the year-end process. And this year we had some extra money that we sent to both the city and the county. I would consider, hopefully you'll consider that as one-time money. We can't guarantee when we true that up that it's going to show up every year. When you consider that we put money in the budget, if, for example, if we have staff slated for the whole year and they're not here for half a year, there's salary savings, those are the kind of things that add up at the end of the year, and we make that adjustment. And so both of the respective entities receive some extra money at the end of the year.
Great, thank you. Well, I'd like to actually, Supervisor Cerna.
Yeah, just real quick, you made mention of the delta in the amount of franchise fee distribution going to both the city and the county being fairly, a pretty sizable difference in terms of the adopted or the amended budget versus our proposed budget versus final budget, to the tune, in the county's case, of about $1 million. So in the staff report, it's attributable to, I think the phrase is just economic activity. If it's a one-time occurrence, what is there any particular economic activity that you can point to that we shouldn't count on in the future for the change?
Well, on the economic activity, you have the franchise fees based on what the haulers charge, and so if you have more businesses, they're picking up more garbage, they're billing out more, and that's the revenue side of the equation. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm thinking was $400,000 or $500,000 that we didn't expect to see. And then you combine it with reduced costs, and that's how you end up with it's a combination of both.
But there were some assumptions that went into the proposed budget that, it sounds to me like we're rightfully staying conservative with those assumptions.
We traditionally have been conservative in our revenue budgeting approach with the SWA.
Okay. But you're kind of giving us some forewarning that we shouldn't become accustomed to
not checks this large at the end of the year.
Okay, that's great.
And honestly, I'm sorry, I can't tell you what would be a normal year-end adjustment, but it's never been this big.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so what I'd like to do here is ask for a motion. But again, this is a pretty large, substantial one-time fee. And given the fact that in the last board meetings, we've heard a lot about trash along the commercial corridors, particularly a lot with the issue of also the homeless and other illegal dumping that's been happening. What I'd like to do is figure out how do we use that delta, the one-time unexpected fee, to make sure that we combat that issue. And I think Supervisor Cerna might have a little more history on the fee itself and what this board's actions had been. But if maybe what I'd like to do is ask for a motion that approves this budget, but with the direction to come back on how we could use this delta for both the city and the county to tackle that specific issue of looking at our commercial corridors, maybe working with the business improvement districts to help them achieve the cleanup and the illegal blight, the illegal dumping and blight that's been happening in our corridors.
Okay.
Second. Good. We have Supervisor Cerna and then Supervisor Frost.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to support the motion. And while we just heard the explanation about this this particular final budget showing a much more positive collection of revenue associated with the franchise fee for both the city and county, that's true. It's due to economic activity, but it's also a function of the rate, and the rate is what I think Mr. Guerra was referencing in terms of some of my background and other directors when we did make a decision a few years back to increase the rate. So at that time, there was a robust discussion about justification for that, and at the time, what directors were interested in seeing that revenue being used towards, which is congruent with what the motion is, which is to perhaps level a more aggressive campaign to deal with illegal dumping and trash along our commercial corridors. So I just wanted to kind of connect those dots, and I think it's an appropriate statement that this motion include that directive, because I got to tell you, with a district that overlaps with 6 of the city council districts in the city of Sacramento, I hear from my colleagues on the city council fairly often, and copied on emails daily to both my office and city council offices about our constituents' concerns for the growing social impacts associated with unsanctioned camping, sometimes near our freeway corridors, our commercial corridors, and I think this additional revenue, even if it is one time, can be immediately put to very good use to help clean up our neighborhoods.
Very good. Supervisor Frost.
I wanted to ask where the one-time fee has been spent in the past. This block of money, by the way, thank you for that, board. But in the past, have you just evaluated this on an annual basis as to where your needs are and where you might allocate those funds?
So when we produce the budget and the board approves the budget, it kind of outlines what the SWA staff is going to do and the different programs that we're going to do. Included in there is a projection of what we think the excess would be in franchise fees that would then go back to the city or the county in a distribution. Those distributions go, at least on the county side, they go into the general fund. And I know at one point there was a direction at the county level that they went into specific programs, and then that direction changed, and so I believe it goes into the general fund today to be used at the discretion of the board or the city council. Once it goes to the city and the council, it's out of the SWA's control. And so if an entity wanted to earmark the funds for specific things, and I think the city, and I know the county at some point in the past has done that, that's entirely up to them.
So it doesn't go to replacing equipment or infrastructure or new programs or...
Those things we would budget for, and we would, if they increase the cost, we would reduce the distribution to the entities accordingly.
So then when you refer to one-time fee, you're referring to, it's going to them annually anyway, at their discretion is what you're saying. Is that correct?
Well, sorry, my phraseology. The distribution this year at the end of the year was much larger than in the past. And so if people were used to a $200,000 distribution and all of a sudden and I don't know what that number was, but now we jumped it up to $1 million each, that difference is what I'm saying is the one-time money.
Okay, what you're saying is don't count on it being that amount, but you can do whatever you want with it, but don't count on that amount.
Right.
Okay.
This was an extraordinary year. We had just the perfect scenario where revenue was up, expenses were way down. We got to the end of the year.
So on an annual basis, the city and county can decide what they want to do with it anyway. It doesn't matter what this board says.
Correct. Okay. And in here, we do have a projection of what we think we're going to send on a 12-month basis out to the different entities.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Supervisor Cerna.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to jump in real quick, just again, the reason I think it's important, though, the discretion may lie with the City Council and the Board of Supervisors in terms of the express or specific use to which we put the distribution towards. Again, the fact of the matter is the revenue is a function of both the economic activity and the rate. And when the rate was adjusted back in, I think it was 2013, it was adjusted based, not, I won't say as a condition, but certainly as an expectation that the adjustment in the rate would help the participating jurisdictions combat illegal dumping specifically.
And we have done a number of things. If you know, remember, we added staff. We added a recycling coordinator to work with the business areas. We've added code enforcement people to help with the compliance and things. Those are certainly all relative projects or tasks for this board. And we certainly we are going to look at expanding those.
Great, thanks. And I think the motion is to approve the budget, but then have staff come back with how to look at that, this one-time delta, so we can use it specifically for what the fee was intended for. And if there's anything that's clear from a lot of our office that we hear from our constituents is the amount of illegal dumping or trash associated with some of the activities with the homeless community. And so we're just honoring the use of that dollar with this, but being able to come back and have that discussion.
Yes.
Board Member Carr.
Well, I certainly agree with the sentiment. I just wanted to make sure that if we dedicate one-time funds to ongoing operations, we will soon be out of money, and we will soon be out of the position to address the issue that we want to address. So I want you to be innovative in the way you look at it, so that we can invest in things that will be ongoing, and not just paying people to pick up trash for 2 years and then we're out of money.
Fair point. Very good point. Good point. Okay, we have a motion and a second. It's been moved by Board Member Kennedy and seconded by Board Member Carr, I believe. If there's no more discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Budget is approved, and we're going to go on to the next item. And being considerate of board members' times, I'd like to see if we can, I think this is a receive and file as well. And so if we can get a judicious presentation on the street recycling container service program.
Hello, my name is Chris Leon. I'm a SWA staff. Thank you, Chair and board members. I appreciate your time. Just to let you know, you might be familiar with the downtown and midtown litter cans that are collected. I call them the beautiful black mail compartments on the street corner that I don't even notice when I run into. The city actually received a grant from Cal Recycle to replace about 60 or so recycling containers next to these. And then it's estimated now the SWA will go out for a request for a proposal to collect these containers 2 days a week, anticipating collecting a few tons of material per year, and then sorting and recording and a waste characterization study is part of this whole process, and it starts with a 1 year with a possible up to 4 one-year extensions for the RFP. And at this time, we're requesting any input from the public and or the board members associated with this project.
Okay, Board Member Ashby.
Thanks. I just had one question for you. Have you met with the Downtown Partnership or like Midtown Business Association or the other business groups to talk to them prior to asking us to initiate?
Yes, for the litter cans, we've met with the Midtown and also the Downtown Association. And when the city wrote the grant application, they had support with some of the associations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's no other direction, then the only thing to remind, just a little replay from our last hearing was we also discussed the issues of some of the corridors like Fulton Avenue, Stockton Boulevard, and some of the other areas where we had trash along and the issues with recycling and containers with RT and those bus stations. So if we can continue to add that and looking at how do we find solutions on that, we would be greatly appreciated as we look at expanding this program.
And I just want to clarify, the board is desirous of our staff requesting an RFP.
Okay.
Right.
Yes, correct. Yeah. And we do have a member from the public, I think, that has signaled that they'd like to speak over there. Ms. Smyra?
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm Michelle Smyra here today on behalf of the R Street Partnership. I don't know if there's a time sensitivity to this. We did talk about the litter cans. We hadn't talked about the recycling cans. I know Downtown Partnership isn't here. Midtown's here. I don't know if you've talked to them specifically about recycling, but if there's not a huge hurry to get the RFP out, we'd love to have a discussion, maybe roll this over until next month.
Okay. Is there time for discussion before the RFP goes out?
I'd have to defer to the city because they have a grant cycle.
Yeah, okay.
That's the timeline we were
Okay,
working on was from the
I mean, it's from my standpoint, I think it's best to make sure that Downtown Partnership and Midtown Business Association, those folks have been included in the conversations. That's normally what we would do at the city before we would go out on an RFP. So if there is no sensitivity, I know sometimes SWA could be a long time before a meeting, but this happens to just be in October, so it seems like that wouldn't be unreasonable.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't disrupt the grant opportunity, I think we will help facilitate, at least I know I will, and then Board Member Ashby would help facilitate that conversation.
Sure. I think just from a scavenging standpoint, we just need to understand where they'd be located, what the thought is, timing on pickup. I mean, just a couple, I don't think, it's not an opposition to it, to moving forward. I think it's just some questions that we haven't had an opportunity to talk to them about.
Great. I think we'll help facilitate the conversation with staff between the city and also SWA.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, if we're on the last item, comments from the public. Did we receive any comment slips from the public? Since there are no comments from the public, then that's the conclusion of our agenda, and we're adjourned at 4:15 unless there's any other comments from the board members. Nope.